After Jesus had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. Most of us, when we hear the story from Matthew about the disciples in their boat, caught in a storm on the Sea of Galilee, eagerly listen for the part where Jesus walks on water, and where Peter attempts to and falls in. And how we like to quote Jesus, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" I think it's probably one of our favorite little morality tales of needing to have faith, presumably so as to move mountains. But I would like to take a look at the short, pithy sentence that I just quoted. He went up to the mountain to pray, and he was there alone. This sentence forms an interesting bridge between the story that just immediately precedes it, of the amazing way in which Jesus showed his disciples how to feed thousands of people with very few resources at hand, and then the story of the disciples caught in the storm, and Jesus then apparently walking on water. What is intriguing about this transition in Matthew is the contrast between Jesus seeking a time of solace and spiritual refreshment out in nature, and the disciples' terror and fear at what the natural world can stir up. I mean, think about it. Several of them were very experienced fishermen who for years had worked all along and across the Sea of Galilee. They knew about the storms that came up suddenly, and they knew enough not to chance it. But here they were, fighting the wind and the waves. And then along comes Jesus, not at all concerned about the tempest. Why? Well, I'd like to suggest to you today, one way to look at it is that it is because he spent time in nature and found strength therein to face the inevitable turbulence that gets stirred up in the natural world. To Jesus, it was not man against nature, as if he were living in a Hemingway novel. Rather, it was humanity in nature, as part of the natural world. If you read the Gospels closely, you notice how much of the reactions of the disciples, as well as figures of authority, struggle with Jesus and even balk at his teachings from time to time. When Jesus told his followers to feed the multitudes, preceding story, they objected, they resisted. Jesus and Peter frequently butt heads. The disciples and others experienced faith in the spiritual journey as a struggle of the heart and soul against all sorts of forces and impulses. The flesh itself was something to be conquered and chastised. Jesus was different. He didn't view the natural body in its fleshliness as something to be mortified or conquered. The natural world was not something to be tamed. Part of the abundant life that Jesus came to give involved returning people to their home and the place of blessings in creation, experiencing creation as a blessing, this world of nature. Jesus spent time renewing his spirit in nature as a natural means of communing with its very creator. Quite often in my ministry, I have spoken with people, usually men, who would rather spend time out in the woods hunting, or out on a lake, or by river fishing, or hiking up a mountain, than come to church. And they would often confess to me that they felt closer to God out in nature. Well, in researching the ministry of Jesus, I've come to believe they have it half right. Jesus did spend significant amounts of time in the natural world as a means to restore his soul and refresh his mind. After his baptism by John in the Jordan River, Jesus spent time in the wilderness in a time of fasting and prayer. The Gospels record that he was known to depart from the buzz of his disciples and the pressing crowds that followed him by going to lonely places that were apart from human habitation. Spending time alone in the natural world was a way that Jesus used to reinvigorate himself after expending so much personal time and energy in service to others. However, this was always balanced by spending time in fellowship with his disciples, worshiping with them, and engaging in the sort of education and learning that can only occur in human society. So the key word here is balance. Jesus balanced the intensity of daily human interactions with the solitude of communion with the natural world. Humans are as much a part of the natural world as are other animals and plants, trees, rivers, mountains, sun and stars. We have developed over centuries and millennia as human beings in direct contact with the natural world, and our human psychological health is actually dependent upon continuous engagement with the rest of creation. However, human civilizations have increasingly become separated and even alienated from the natural world. By losing contact with nature, we humans can forget the fact that we are also creatures. We have a creator. The human hubris of thinking that we are the authors of our own existence and the final arbiters of our actions arise out of this creaturely amnesia. So spending time in natural places, and especially wild places, can restore us to our place in creation. It works in concert with devotional practices by expanding our vision and exercising our sense of awe and wonder. The beauty that we encounter feeds our souls in ways that we are unable to accomplish out of our own volition. The natural world comes to us as a tremendous gift, a blessing we have not earned and cannot claim to deserve. And so it serves as a tangible experience of God's grace. Anyone who has taken time apart to go hiking or camping or even just sitting in a park or garden with no pressing agenda can understand the psychological and emotional benefits that time apart can provide. Imagine, for example, that you're sitting in a cabin at a retreat along a river. Steep canyon walls lift the horizon high above the river. Trees surround the cabin and embrace the river shores on either side. The unrelenting, unresting, as well as unhasting pace of the water as it tumbles and trips over the rocks outside the window calls you to a different pace of life. Along this river there is space to think and ponder, permission granted to wonder and consider, room simply to be and not prove yourself. You can drop your pretenses, set aside your feigned self-importance, and hang up for a time the demands placed upon you. Trees and rocks and river, they don't care if you are the CEO of a multinational company or a garbage collector. Here, in this spot in nature, you can simply be. The times Jesus spent in the lonely places of the natural world were just such retreats from doing into the depths of being. Such time apart serves to settle us back and center us down at the blessed giftedness of life. A gift given to us beyond any consideration of whether we have earned it or deserve it in any way. Time apart in the natural world can return us to the mysteries of grace and providence. So take time in nature. Spend time quietly sitting in your garden, watching the birds, observing the clouds pass by, the bees visit the flowers. Take a walk in the woods. Do it silently. Rest often. Just look around and take it all in. Sit by a lake or a stream. Let the sounds wash over you. Be still and be at home. Rest in creation as a part of creation. Learn from Jesus the power of some time apart and find rest and replenishment for your soul. Amen.